You're listening to Tassie Encounters on Faith FM, and we're coming to you from Tasmania, right across Australia. Each weekday at 9 a.m, you can hear what the Bible says about past, current and future events. You can learn how to study the Bible more effectively. You can get to know who God is, why we're here and where we're going. And you can experience personal encounters with Jesus. I'm your host, Jason Cook, and today we've got David Maxwell joining us, and the next 3-4 episodes. So this week we've got David Maxwell on the topic of the three angels' messages. So welcome, David.
Thank you, Jason. Good to be here.
Good to have you here on our shorter programs, Tassie Encounters Moments this week.
Yes.
Just remind our listeners that you can still text us in and claim our book offers. Our show number is 0488 880891. And we'd love to get your questions, your feedback, and love for you to claim our book offers that we'll have coming up this week. So, yeah, great to have you here, David. So we've been going through a series on Revelation, and you've got another topic here.
Yes. In the next few discussions, I'd like to look at our impatience and God's patience and long-suffering, especially as it relates to some very, very important and urgent messages that we've got recorded for us in Revelation 14. And many people might have heard that called the three angels' messages. And so we're going to dig into that a little bit this week.
Awesome. That's good. And you've got a bit of an opening illustration for us this week.
Yes, to start today, I want to look at man's impatience. Now, I think we can all probably relate to this, but a well-known illustration for God asking for God's patience is a man who once prayed, "Give me patience, Lord, but give it to me now." And I think a lot of us feel like that. You know, we need some kind of characteristic that we see flaws and faults with, but we don't want to wait for it. You know, we want that solution straight away. Well, a friend that we knew once in another state was bemoaning the fact that she's had such little patience. And anyway, she had a husband who was getting dementia, or Alzheimer's, one of the two, and was just forgetting everything. He'd put his car keys down and forget he'd put them there. And it's very difficult for people who are living with a partner that's going through this, because they are so close to the issue. They don't see, they often don't see that, hey, I need to step back from this and change the way I respond, because the person's not in their right mind anymore. Anyway, and she was bemoaning the fact to my wife once, and my wife said, "Well, what are you praying for?" And she stopped for a moment, and then she said, "Patience," and they both burst out laughing because God was using this experience to teach her more patience. And the thing about learning not to be impatient is sometimes it takes a lot of time. Or for any change in our character, it takes a lot of time.
It's interesting how when you say it takes a lot of time, well, that's connected to the patience itself, isn't it?
It is.
God's patient with us.
Yeah, so much. So like that friend of ours, we often pray for a certain characteristic. God often allows us to experience the opposite, so that if we really want what we're asking for, we'll pursue it with even more determination. And this in the end actually produces, it works out to produce the characteristic that we're asking God for. And I remember a verse that comes to mind from Romans. It says, "For all things work together for the good of those who love him." It doesn't say all things are good, it says all things work together for the good. And so the Bible shows us many examples of the results of human impatience, and one of them that I'd like to read today is in Numbers chapter 20, and starting in verse 2, and I'm going to read 2 to 6, and this is talking about Moses. "Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, 'If only we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness?' and we and our animals should die here. And why have you made us come out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. So Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. This is terribly frustrating for Moses and Aaron. These people are saying that they would rather be slaves. They would rather be back in Egypt and be slaves than to be here in the desert being led by God. And now, look, to be fair to Moses with what happens after this, a lot of things have been going on. The people who refused to enter the promised land, they would turn back to wander in the wilderness, and then that's in Numbers 13 and 14. If that wasn't enough, then when they saw their punishment, they said, okay, we'll go in. And they went in without God's blessing. Well, they tried to, and that ended up in disaster. Then there was a rebellion against Moses and Aaron by the Korites. The ground opens up and the people fall in that were rebelling. The rest of the people then complained that Moses and Aaron did that. They killed God's people, and so, they were going to stone them for that. God intervened and proved that they were his messengers, by Aaron's rod that budded. Some of you might have heard that story overnight. Budded and grew almonds overnight, unheard of. Then Moses and Aaron's sister, right at the beginning of the chapter that we're looking at a little bit today, Moses and Aaron's sister Miriam died at Kadesh without seeing God's promise of entering into Canaan, because of the people's complaining. So you can kind of imagine where Moses and Aaron are at the moment. They're a bit strung out. They're stressed, as we would say today. They might have even been burned out, I guess, by this constant complaining. But Moses and Aaron were God's mouthpiece. They were speaking for God, and they were held to a higher standard. And the same's for you and me, I think, don't you? Don't you think that, Jason?
Yeah, I guess so. God calls us to trust in Him, and if particularly for you and me, well, for me, I grew up in the church. I think I've had the benefit of having this knowledge and this relationship for a long time. So. Yeah, I think it's important.
Look, I think people who have had that faith for a long time have been representing God to other people. I think God holds us to a higher standard. People who know nothing about God, God winks at the ignorance, the Bible says. But for those who know, God holds us to a higher standard. So after all these things have happened, it's clear that Moses and Aaron are in a pretty fragile state. They're being the meat in the sandwich, if you like, for years. And I think perhaps the people doubted. Now, this is my thinking. The Bible doesn't support this, I guess, in any way, but it would appear that the people seem to think that Moses and Aaron are the ones that are saying this stuff, and it's not God. I don't know. But either way, they were still complaining that things were better in Egypt. I wish they were back there. So this constant rebellion against everything you say when you're just following God's leading, it's wearing on your soul. It's hard. It's really hard to keep a positive attitude and remain focused on leadership against this constant behaviour. And I can say that with some authority. So God has a plan for God's people, and they need to see that it's God who's leading them, not Moses and Aaron. Because remember, God speaks to Moses, Moses speaks to Aaron, Aaron speaks to the people. And God says, gather the people together and speak to the rock, and the water will flow out. So this is the second time water comes out of the rock. However, in their frustration, Moses and Aaron speak to the people and they hit the rock.
That's not how God wanted it to be. And it's interesting because some of the words that Moses said too is that I think he almost claimed
we have
that,
to bring water?
Yeah, we have to, rather than giving the credit to God.
Exactly. You know, and I think that's what it seems like. It seems like by taking this action, by Aaron and Moses hitting the rock, it doesn't say which one did it, but, you know, maybe Aaron was speaking and Moses hits the rock. It does say Moses hit the rock. It seems that they take the people's eyes off God and, hey, we're the ones that are doing this for you. But the blessing is that later on God says he was glorified in their eyes. So even though they did it wrong, you know, Moses hits the rock twice. And I wonder if perhaps he hits it the first time and he's like, uh-oh, nothing happened. That's not what God said. And he hits it again. And then the water comes out. But God is faithful. He provides the water. So I think there's a lot we can learn from this story about patience and trusting God. And if Moses and Aaron had only been more patient and obeyed God more carefully, they would have witnessed God's power, and I think it would have corrected the thinking of the people. It might have, it might not have, I don't know, but at least it would have glorified God better. And maybe people would have seen, hey, we're fighting against God, we're not fighting against Moses and Aaron. So I want to challenge our listeners today to listen very carefully to God and to obey him fully. You might think you know what's best. You might let your temper get the best of you. But really we should be praying daily for patience. And we should be praying for God to correct our thinking and teach us to wait on the Lord, as King David said and many others in the Bible. So if you'd like to learn how to do that, please get in touch and we'll send you some information on how to do it.
Now, we've got a question for you to contemplate this week, and we'd love to hear from you, so do text us in a response to this. Have you ever received an urgent and pressing message, and what did you do about it? Text us in on 0488 880 891.
This program is made possible by the support of Adventist World Radio.
Our free book offer this week is called Archangel. Throughout the history of the universe, angels have had an interesting and intimate interplay with humans. As God's messengers to a fallen world, they have watched and walked among men, invisible, powerful, guarding against the evil forces that surround us. Archangel examines the role played by angels in the great controversy. From the stories recorded of angelic intervention in biblical times to the coincidences in our own lives. These powerful stories challenge us to open our eyes to the angels who walk beside us, to recognize the ongoing war between good and evil, and to recognize the ongoing war between good and evil. I've got that twice for some reason, but maybe that was important to repeat. It is to recognize that war that's going on. So that's our book offer this week. Text in TEM07 to 0488 880 891 to claim a copy of that book. So next time, we're going to have a look at the first message of the three angels' messages. So do join us for our next episode next time. Thank you, David, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Jason.
No worries. This is Anna Beedon with Hope, Patience, Prayer. May you encounter Jesus more today.
Lift your head, little one. Lift your eyes to see the sun. Lift your heart and burden soul. Oh, rejoice in hope. Lift your head, little one. Lift your eyes to see the sun. Lift your heart and burden soul. Oh, rejoice in hope. Oh, the trials, they shall come, but I will hold you in my arms. Look to the skies in my I come on bended knee. I come to you daily. Diligence I need to be, constant in praying. Constant in praying.
This program has been made possible by the support of Adventist World Radio.